In my one-year review of BMR's tubular spring perch A-arms, I mentioned that the polyurethane bushings failed under autocross conditions. BMR sent me a replacement set of poly bushings and sleeves, but I was concerned that a stronger bushing material was needed to solve the issue. A machinist and fellow autocrosser named Jacques Bene offered to make me a set of custom Delrin bushings. Jacques' bushings are the same dimensions as the BMR poly bushings, and they are very well made. They've been designed to work with the BMR A-arms and sleeves without any modifications. I'll cover the install of the Delrin bushings in a minute, but first I want to discuss what I found when I took the BMR A-arms out of my 2000 GT. The first thing I discovered is the poly bushing failure was pretty significant. There are a lot of forces acting on the bushings, and as you can see, the metal of the A-arm cut right through the poly. The metal sleeves were also deformed at the edges. Autocross is tough on suspension components, but this issue really concerns me. I've asked for other people using the BMR A-arms to leave comments if they've had the same problem. The second discovery involved the way the bushings get lubed. The instructions BMR provides don't address the type or quantity of lube required for proper installation and use. I called BMR prior to installing the A-arms, and I was told to use green grease, a synthetic waterproof grease, and give the grease fittings a few squirts to lube the sleeve. This is one of the bushings that came out of the A-arms. You can see there is a little grease on the back edge, but none in the channels and none between the bushing and sleeve. Looking into the A-arm, you can see about 3 tablespoons of grease. That represents 5 squirts from my grease gun. It would take 5 times that amount to get the grease to spread into the channels. All 4 eyes on the A-arms and all 8 bushings had this issue. This didn't cause the bushing failure, but it is something that BMR needs to address in their instructions. If I intended to use these A-arms with the poly bushings, I would remove and lube the bushings and sleeves prior to installing the A-arms. I wouldn't rely on the grease fittings alone to get lube everywhere it needs to be. And when servicing the bushings, I would add more than a few squirts of grease. Delrin bushings are hard. That makes them capable of holding up to serious abuse, but it also makes them notoriously tough to install. These bushings are a very tight fit. You will have to battle them a bit to get them in. Putting the bushings in the freezer overnight, using some lube, a bushing installation tool, and a lot of patience will make the install easier. Or you can have them pressed in at a shop. I don't own a press, so I had to do it by hand. I came at the install a number of different ways, but this was the process that worked best for me. Clean the inside of the A-arm eye. Make sure there aren't any barbs in the metal that will prevent the bushing from sliding into place. Lube the eye with green grease. Lube the sleeve. Take a bushing from the freezer and lube any surface that will touch metal. You don't need a ton of lube, just make sure to get good coverage. Slide the sleeve into the bushing and set the bushing into the eye of the A-arm. Make sure you are using the correct length sleeve for the eye. There are 2 different size sleeves because the 2 eyes on each A-arm are different lengths. Using a bushing installation tool, with a bolt wide enough to keep the bushing centered, slowly press the bushing into place. Remember, the sleeve will stick out past the edge of the metal eye during the first bushing install. When you feel the sleeve bottom out against the installation tool plate, stop. Most of the time you want to install the bushings first, then press in the sleeve. But in this situation, I found it easier to use the sleeve as a guide for the installation tool bolt. Remove the tool, lube and position the second bushing, and use the tool to draw both bushings into place. This will be very, very tough. You'll need to clamp the A-arm to a table or have someone stand on the A-arm while you press the bushings into place. Make sure to put the A-arm on a piece of wood to avoid damaging the grease fittings. Go slow, use lots of anti-seize on the bushing tool threads, and make sure the bushings are going in straight. I recommend doing one eye at a time to ensure that you don't put a short sleeve in a long eye or a long sleeve in a short eye. It will be extremely difficult to get the sleeve out if you make this mistake. Once you have all of the bushings in place, it's time to put the A-arm into the K-member. If there are barbs or raised areas on the K-member around the bolt holes, grind them down to make sure the mating surface is smooth. You will probably need to spread the K-member mounting points using parts of the bushing install tool. In most cases, you can create clearance by squeezing the inner mounting tabs together with the tool. Go slow and don't bend the mounting areas too much or the bolt holes won't line up. Opening up the mounting areas and greasing them will make the install much easier. A little grease on the bushing faces won't hurt either. The tabs will go back into place when you torque the A-arm bolts. Torque the bolts to the factory spec. Here's what the Delrin bushings look like with the A-arms in the car. I took the GT for a 30-mile test drive on twisty back roads, and the car felt composed and confident. There's a slight increase in NVH, but that's to be expected with harder bushings. Unfortunately, it's the off-season, so I can't test the Delrin bushings under autocross conditions, and there's no way to safely mimic those conditions on the street. Autocross season starts in March. I'll post an update once I get the car out on course. I'm really excited to see how much of an improvement they are over the poly bushings when I'm pushing the car to the limit. If you're interested in purchasing these bushings, Jacques can make you a set for $80 plus shipping. I've posted his contact information in the description. Please feel free to ask me or Jacques any questions you might have.